Hello everyone and welcome to the NARSA weekly update for the week commencing Monday the 12th of September 2022. It's Gary here again, and well, that was the week that we all didn't want in more ways than one, wasn't it? Continuing our form of giving up pretty much everything to our opponents for the second game in a row in the first half, then all of that being, quite honestly, put into perspective and completely overshadowed on Thursday by the passing of Her Majesty the Queen at the age of 96. I was actually chatting with Brian Campbell earlier in the week, last week, and he was commenting how frail Her Majesty looked. And at the time, I hadn't actually seen the photographs of her formally welcoming and addressing the Prime Minister at the time. And I think that was Tuesday. So I did a quick Google image check, and indeed she was looking very frail at that point. And unfortunately, that was, I guess, probably one of, if not the last formal thing she did in serving her great country. 15 Prime Ministers over almost 70 years, actually over 70 years I should say, actually, because the platinum was last year. But what an incredible tenure she served for. And I'm actually going to list the Prime Ministers here because I think it's kind of cool. When I was doing my notes for this week's pod, I thought I'll just take a wee peek down, and then when I was looking, I was like, oh my word, this is quite interesting. So I'll go from 1 through, and there's actually a wee bit of a twist in it as well. So the first one was Winston Churchill. Then it was Anthony Eden. Then it was Harold Macmillan, Alec Douglas Home, Harold Wilson, Ted Heath, Harold Wilson again, James Callaghan, Margaret Thatcher, John Major, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, and then, as I said last week, they're just Liz Truss. Now, I know the history books say that she swore in, or whatever the actual name of it is, 15, but if you do it in chronological order and non-consecutive order, it is 16, because you had the two Harold Wilsons in there in between, or sandwiching, I guess, Ted Heath. So that was kind of interesting, but a bit of a who's who of UK political history right there. As I say, I thought it was a wee bit interesting. What an incredible woman and servant to her country, and an ambassador for grace and presence, really. Such an inspiration, and she'll be sorely missed by many, as you can see from all the footage of the coffin making its way from Scotland down to England there over the last day or so. It's just amazing the amount of people that are showing up just to get a chance to take a peek, one last peek at Her Majesty. I was in Lodge on Thursday night, and quite honestly, I didn't really feel right about attending Lodge on the night of her passing, but the leadership wanted to go ahead, and quite, to be fair, in hindsight, it was done very well and very, very gracious, and I was actually glad to have been part of it. But anyway, we were in Lodge and had the opportunity to sing God Save the King. And I don't mind admitting that it felt kind of weird, but thankfully I didn't fluff my lines on that one, and we also did pay a wonderful tribute to Her Majesty at the same time as well. Speaking of fluffing our lines, I had an absolute belter of a What Gaz Got Wrong last week, didn't I? Oh my word. Yep, for those who listened, I said that the Ajax game last week was on Tuesday, when in fact it was on Wednesday. Wow, what's that like? That's like printing the wrong date on the daily newspaper, or producing a calendar and forgetting that it's a leap year, or something bizarre like that. Well, whoopsie-daisy, that's my apologies, and apologies if I gave anyone a mild coronary on that one, by maybe listening to that before you had a chance to know when the game actually was. That's my bad. I'll do better and actually read more closely when doing my research for the pods from now on, I promise. On to the game segment for this past week. As I mentioned at the top of the pod there, another horror show for our beloved team, and a very heavy 4-0 defeat in our re-entry to the Champions League group stages. Man, was that sobering on so many levels, and quite honestly, I don't enjoy being sober too much, so that was a double whammy. I did say in last week's recap that Giovanni just couldn't start John McLaughlin in the Ajax game, and of course he does that very thing. So I guess we know how far down the pecking order Alan McGregor has come then. Oh well, Thankfully, he wasn't the main villain on the evening. We didn't really get started in the game, certainly in the early stages of the game, which actually transpired to be the full first half, but we didn't know that at the time. And it seemed like Ajax were quite content just to kind of feel things out. We gave a completely free header chance around 10 or 12 minutes or so, a complete free header. But just like in our domestic form, we don't seem to learn a thing, either in game or from training or anything like that. And then we lose yet another goal directly from a corner in 17 minutes when Goldson and Tav just kind of fell asleep again, and their guy Alvarez puts it in completely unmarked. Just an absolutely incredibly ridiculous goal to lose. I'm fed up with these. This basically just spurred Ajax on, and they stepped up and had it. It seemed at the time chance after chance after chance, and were pretty much guilty of trying to walk it into the net, which is a thing that we sometimes label at our team as well. And this pressure just didn't relent. And then I don't even know what player it was. He tries some sort of fancy overstep move on the outside of the box, and don't tell me he meant this. And it very fortunately breaks for their player to get in and get a shot away. It takes a giant deflection off of a very unfortunate James Sands to put it in to what was essentially an OG, but it was awarded to their player, I guess, because he hit it on target. So if it gets deflected, it's still the player's goal anyway. And that was around about 32 minutes or so, something like that. And what Leo and I did is we turned all notifications off for the day. We agreed. He went to school, turned his phone not off completely, but all the notifications off. I did the same, and it's even more torture because it was an earlier kick-off game, and then we watched it together after working after school. And anyway, back to the game. So rather amusingly at that point, 2-0, I said to Leo, listen, I still think we could grow into this game, and once we start playing and start really, seeing what they've got in defence, why not? And I don't actually think I even got a chance to finish that sentence, and then Tav just got completely stripped and exposed by their boy Kudus, something like that, who ran all the way around them and pretty much unchallenged, quite honestly, into our box, and then what a finish. Fair's fair. It was an absolutely world-class finish to make it 3-0 in 33 minutes, and then that's all that very familiar feeling that we get that we're just not at the races and the game is done in just over half an hour for the second game in a row, and I'm absolutely pig sick of that feeling. And Ajax didn't stop, and it was McLaughlin making a couple of saves that he needed to make to keep the score respectable. He even came out for a cross ball right on half time, which was nice. Remember the big criticism of Alan McGregor over the past few years was that he didn't come for cross balls, and that left the defence really exposed, which is true. I don't actually recall a whole bunch of times his successor actually comes out for cross balls either, but maybe I'm just still totally biased against him right now after that ridiculous performance at Sharkhead the weekend before. Anyway, second half was pretty much a carbon copy of the second half at Sharkhead, with one exception. We did have the ball in the net after an absolutely brilliant right foot, you heard me, right foot finish by Borna Barisic in the 70th minute. You just never know what might happen from that. 2 goals down with 20 minutes to go. Unfortunately, Ryan Kent was a wee bit lazy and coming back and was offside when he collected the ball in the lead up to getting it to Borna. So we're not getting much luck with the VAR decisions this season like we did in the Europa League last season, that's for sure. Such a shame, because it was an absolutely brilliant finish, and what a goal that would have been. That would have made one of the goals of the week, I'm fairly sure. But anyway, as I said, like at Sharkhead, we had a wee bit of improvement. We had some huff and puff. They took the foot off the gas, and then we just lose a goal that's it's just a combination of tragicness and madness in the same. And at least this time it wasn't McLaughlin, because I think I would have burst a blood vessel if it was, and I just don't think I could have handled that. No, this time it was the supposedly ever dependable Ryan Jack with just a blind suicide pass to their guy, who walks around McLaughlin and slots it home for their fourth. And then the fella, a wee bit bizarrely, just went down straight after scoring and then had to go off. Actually went off injured. Weird. I didn't see anything that happened to him. Maybe the pass from Jack was weighted a wee bit differently than he would have liked or something like that, and he tweaked something, so maybe that was a method in Jack's madness. Nah, I don't know. Just absolute trash by Ryan Jack for that one. Ryan Kent almost had the ball in the net in extra time, but it just wasn't to be, and that would have been decent and possibly important. You never know for the goal difference come qualification time for whatever it is we're chasing at the end of this group. It might be nothing the way we're playing right now, to be dead honest, but especially after Napoli's 4-1 thrashing of Liverpool, if we had matched that result, then we wouldn't have been in quite as bad a shape. Anyway, positives. It's great to be back in the Champions League, although based on this showing, it's going to be a long next 5 games. I tell you that. I looked on Malmo's performances last year after they took us apart at Ibrox when we thought we were going to get through last year, and I don't think they got a point, did they? Or maybe they got 1 point, and I think they scored maybe 1 or 2 goals in the 6 games that they played. And boy, does it feel like that might be our story if we don't really pull our socks up here. So another positive, McLaughlin wasn't at fault for any of the goals, as I mentioned earlier, and he did make a couple of decent saves that he would be expected to make, to be perfectly honest. Antonio Cholak, the boy does his best in every single game, but he's cutting a very isolated figure up top in these very tough away games. That's just not his game. He's a poacher, and if we give him chances, he'll give us a great opportunity to score, but leaving him up there as the kind of target man or the guy that's going to hold up or do the sort of stuff that Alfie can do, that's not his game. And finally, on the positivity stuff, we're having Leon King make an impressive Champions League debut in a reshuffled defence at half-time after Tav went off. Is going to do the boy absolutely no harm whatsoever. Negatives, we're just outclassed again, and some of the goals we lost were absolutely dreadful again as well. It's just embarrassing to look at that sort of stuff. Referee watch. I thought that Tobias Stieler from Germany was brilliant. I like to get the referees' names right as much as I can. But yeah, I think it was brilliant. He let the game flow when he could and stopped it only when absolutely necessary. So he's actually going to get a 9 out of 10 for that game. Our second game last week, as you'll know, was postponed after the passing of Her Majesty. And quite honestly, I can't help but thinking that this game being postponed was a bit of a blessing for us, as we were on a dramatic slide there last week. At one point, we're flying and we're only a very poor refereeing, or a couple of very poor refereeing decisions away against Hibs from being level at the top of the league going into the game at Sharkhead, and then Tom Lawrence gets injured at the end of the St Johnstone game, and then we just absolutely fall apart all over the pitches. I mean, is Lawrence really that good and that important for us? I'm not 100% sure. He's been doing great, of course, but the whole team is just an absolute shell without him in it. And it's been an incredible slide from the team, and I don't mind admitting, and maybe this is just a glass half empty, but I couldn't see it getting much better at Pittodrie for us. So we'll hopefully have used this time to regroup and get back to basics, and hopefully we'll see a marked improvement this week. So speaking of this week, 2 games this week, starting with this Wednesday's rearranged from Tuesday. Now, trust me, I know for a fact the game is Wednesday this week, and I know for a fact it was supposed to be Tuesday this week, and it was rearranged due to some policing shortages in light of the coverage that Her Majesty needs for right now. So it is Wednesday, Champions League game at home against Napoli, and that's a 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time kickoff. That's 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time kickoff. That's my time, of course, and that's 8 p.m. back home. And as I mentioned before, Napoli really put one over on Liverpool in the first game, and they actually also sit atop Serie A and are unbeaten domestically after, I think it's 6 games, so kind of roughly about the same start to the season as we've had number of games wise. I mean, not performances of results, obviously. But I have to give you a wee funny here. I did get a message from Scott Allen from Bramley last week that was a kind of capture that said, Rangers have asked UEFA to cancel next week's game versus Napoli. UEFA told them if they did, it would be an automatic 3-0 defeat. Rangers said, fine, it'll be the best result we've had in weeks. I have to admit, I laughed out loud at that one, and that's kind of the situation I'm in right now. If I don't laugh, I'll greet, to be dead honest. Now, I'm reminded that around this time last season, we were laughing hysterically at that mob from the East End. And they just got the head down and they plugged away and they gelled, and then they just started performing. Certainly domestically, not in Europe. And before you know it, they won the league. So I'm going to keep believing, because it's way too early for anything else. And we'll just see how things shake out over the next wee while. Our second game is back to league action at home to Dundee United on Saturday, and that's a 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. UK kick-off. And interestingly, United haven't been beat since they lay down 9-0 against the East End mob. I'm pretty sure Rangers don't have a 9-0 in us right now, but I'll take any sort of victory on Saturday just to get us back in the win column and hopefully steady the ship a wee bit. For RTV, nothing to report on that front since they actually didn't have broadcast rights for the Champions League game last week, so nothing on the RTV front. For shout-outs for this week, firstly, I'd like to wish from everyone at NARSA a very happy 80th birthday to the greatest ever Ranger, John Greig, who celebrated the significant milestone yesterday. So I guess that was the 11th of September. It's tremendous to see Mr. Greig still actively involved at the club and having a hand in supporting Gers, former Rangers players via the Rangers Former Players Benevolence Club too, and whatever else he does behind the scenes. I think he's a mainstay there. So happy birthday, Mr. Greig, and here's to many more. And following on that one, I mentioned it a wee bit at the top of the pod there. This week, from a shout-out perspective, it's really all about the monarchy for me, and I'd like to congratulate King Charles III on his ascendancy to the throne. I had an inkling, for some bizarre reason in my life, that he might never get the opportunity to become king, and I have absolutely no basis for thinking that, apart from Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth just not relinquishing the crown at any point during her life. And I wondered maybe if something else was going to happen with the monarchy and something was going to kind of shift after her passing, but that wasn't to be. So to see him take on the duties so elegantly, and of course to recite the work required, and which included the statement. Now I think I got this right because I actually played the video a few times and captured the text. Do faithfully promise and swear that I shall viably maintain and preserve the settlement of the true Protestant religion as established by the laws made in Scotland. And that got a whole bunch of anti-monarchy arseholes in a bit of a frenzy, didn't it? My God, it's brilliant. I have to mention at this point, actually, some of the absolutely disgusting, vile filth that's been posted online. I'm not a big online guy, as most of you probably know, so I go on it now and again, and I'll take a wee peek now and again, but it certainly doesn't dominate my day or my life or anything like that. But to see some of the disgusting stuff online, it's just demoralising, and really has me questioning the actual socialness of social media. I think social media was conceived for good, but it just seems to have given low intelligence, zero personality Neanderthals a platform to spew utter garbage out there into the world. If you don't have anything nice to say, just don't say anything at all. And if you think anyone's interested in your opinion, they're not. So get a grip and just piss off back to whatever hole you came from and take a good look at yourself, you utter cretins. Just disgusting. Anyway, NARSA 2023, I can officially confirm that it is 276 days and 39 weeks until Toronto Midtown 2023. And that is going to be a belter. Yeah, we're into the 30s now in weeks to go. It's getting closer. We were informed last week that we had a change of events management point of contact at the hotel, and we managed to meet with her on Thursday afternoon just to do some introductions and go through where things currently stand, what's on our immediate radar, and what things we need from them in the short term. She seems very nice, and more importantly, sharp as a tack as well. So hopefully that bodes well for our ongoing planning and executing efforts as we close in on the event. Our target is to have the hotel and event tickets available for sale in September, which is our typical timeline on non-worldwide pandemic years. So we'll definitely work towards that and stay tuned, and hopefully by next week I'll actually be able to provide a wee bit more information on what we're able to do on the travel packages front as well, because part of the meeting on Thursday was to discern a wee bit of reality in terms of what's achievable and what isn't achievable from the hotel perspective only for that. So hopefully we'll have a wee bit of an update on that for next week, as I say. On to other business. Your NARSA executive have a meeting tomorrow night. That's Tuesday, and for absolute real, it's Tuesday. I don't have my days mixed up this week, I promise. I'm going to keep saying that just to make sure. But we will just work through our regular agenda items and establish our near-term action items for the convention as we move forward. So I'll share more of the pertinent information and the main outputs from that meeting on next week's pod. On the communications front for this past week, it's kind of like last week, where there isn't a whole hell of a lot going on, to be honest. Like last week, the Rangers site has been pretty dormant, it feels like, and there hasn't been a lot of activity on the business side of things of late. And I think we kind of get to that when we're in a real glut of games, to be honest. So it's not that anything bad is happening, unless you read what Dave King posted in an open letter to the board, which I'm not even going to touch for this week. But the only main update I have for you is on the memorabilia associated with the Rangers 72 film. We now have the NARSA specific code, and we'll be sending that out later this week. And I'd encourage everyone to at the very least take a peek. And if this is your jam and you can afford it, it might be a cracking gift for someone for a upcoming anniversary, birthday, or Christmas, because that's just around the corner as well. So we'll pop that out on our social media and through our email distribution lists as well. And as I say, if you're into that, get going on that. They are limited edition, very much so. So don't delay if you are interested. And what I did want to share this week was in the area of benevolence. Actually, a wee while ago, we were approached by Alfredo Morelos' charity, who'd been trying for a wee while to get my email to work in some way. They contacted us through social media and they told me, we passed on the email address. They kept saying we can't get through. I'm like, it's not coming through. It's not in my junk folder or anything like that. Not exactly sure what happened, but once we got email to work, we had a wee bit of dialogue and we had a nice chat about what they were looking for from NARSA, and like in terms of support and in financial or other kind of support. But admittedly, this was towards the kind of latter part of the transfer window being open, and right around about the time when the Alfie of old showed up and got his red card at Easter Road. So I kind of thought to myself, I think I'll just wait this one out and make sure Alfie is still actually with us next week, and then we'll take it from there. And then, of course, Gio drops him from the squad completely. And at that point, I'm thinking, I don't know if this is going to be a long-term conversation we're going to have with his charity foundation. But lo and behold, he is indeed still with us, and then hopefully we'll get the Alfie of old back, the good one, not the red card one, and then we'll take it from there. But the reason I tell you this is that for long-term listeners, you'll know that benevolence is something that's top of mind for me and the executive, and I'd like to get a wee bit more purposeful, a wee bit more organised about it going forward. So we will discuss this in tomorrow's executive meeting, and I might have a wee bit more to share about that on next week's pod. So that'll do it for this week, my friends. As always, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to listen, and please do share it with whomever you think might enjoy it. And until next week, here's to, I don't know, hopefully more respectable scorelines for our team this week to get ourselves back on track. So until next week, please do take care of yourself. All the very best. Cheerio.